going to be built. You have a responsibility. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for your children, your grandchildren, and generations to come. Look around you. Learn from other nationalities and other races. You owe it to the Black race. Stand up and be counted. Belong.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. We've received our first question from Cece Ferguson. She wanted to know how ADGG goes about endorsing candidates and what are the criteria and what are the rules for endorsing those candidates. In a nutshell, I will answer that question that ADGG's process of endorsement follows an internal procedure that we have in place, and it involves ADGG leaders, the chapter coordinator for the state where that candidate that needs to be endorsed comes from, as well as certain other stakeholders. It is an open and transparent process. But that's the summary. If you want details, we can reach out to you offline. Thank you. Next question comes from Ms. Tinude. And the question is, how is ADGG related to ADDI? I will call on the President and CEO, Mr. Ugo Nwokoro, the Honorable Nwokoro, to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for that question. Madam Ambassador, you're well spoken. Thank you as always. ADDG is in partnership with ADDI. ADDI, for those who don't know the full meaning of that acronym, is African Diaspora Development Institute, founded and by Honorable Chairman of ADDG. So while ADDI focuses on projects in Africa and bringing investment to Africa, holding the presidents and heads of state of Africa accountable for when they are looking for expertise abroad, they look at ADDI, and ADDI taps into African diaspora. So ADDI and ADDG work hand in hand to make sure that African diaspora expertise is utilized in Africa. So while ADDG focuses on grooming, educate, empower, and elect African diaspora. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Let's see, the next question here is from Dr. Kelechi Lawrence out of Delaware. Wants to know why people of African descent, especially African immigrants, expect someone else to solve their societal problems rather than engaging with each other. I'll ask Ambassador Battle to take that question. He has seen a lot of them.
Well, let me make two brief statements before responding to that. I want to thank Dr. Garvey. Listening to him speak reminds me of when I was in undergraduate school listening to tapes of his father. And I want to thank him for his presence. I also want to make a brief statement. You said earlier, Mr. Moderator, that if you're Black, you're African. I like to say if you're human, you're African. Because if a person looks at the Jewish, the Christian, or the Islamic tradition, there is a belief that God had enough sense to create the human race on the African continent. So if you are human and you breathe air, you are African no matter what you look like. And we need to let people know that they are African no matter what they look like. Now, in terms of Africans working collaboratively, I want us to understand the golden opportunity that we have now. That was a long, long time when African Americans reached out to members of the more immediate African diaspora, and we allowed white America to tell African Americans that Africans distrusted us because we had come to this nation and had been put into slavery. And then when I started traveling to the African continent with quite a bit of regularity, it became apparent that European and white Americans, as Madam Ambassador has often said, we need to get beyond the slave mentality and the mentality of the result of colonialism, told Africans that African Americans did not want to work with them. We have an opportunity to expose that as a bold-faced lie. African Americans are partners with the African diaspora, and the African diaspora is a partner with the African American community. And if we can forge that partnership, not only in terms of elections, but in terms of thinking together and demanding good education, great education, good opportunity, all around, good jobs, being able to live anywhere we choose to live, there will be no other group in this nation more powerful and more strong than a unified African diaspora and a unified African American community walking hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. And at the same time, then reaching out to other people who have similar issues that we have faced. And interestingly enough, poor white communities have been facing some of the same kind of disadvantages that some African American communities have faced. We can build a partnership more powerful than anything that anyone can imagine. So golden opportunity, golden moment for Wakanda to take place with African diaspora leadership and African Americans working together. And who cares who came here first? Who cares who came here second? And we now know where our African heritage comes from. So we are brothers and sisters, one with the other. Let's face the world as brothers and sisters, one with the other, shoulder to shoulder.
Mr. Moderator, can I add something to what the ambassador just said?
Thank you, Ambassador Battle. Yes, Honorable Ogunwokoro.
Yes, that's exactly what ADDG is here to solve, that problem, that partnership. And that is why ADDG is the only organization in the world that we know of that is uniting all people of African descent, whether they are African Americans, African Caribbeans, African Europeans, African Chinese, it doesn't matter. ADDG is uniting all of us so that we can form that missing partnership, so that we can educate ourselves together, empower each other, and elect each other. And like the Ambassador Battle said, if we do that, there will be no other organization in the whole world that will be as powerful as this organization that we're talking about.
Thank you, Honorable Nwokoro. I see Ms. Trish Brown has her hands raised. Ms. Trish Brown.
Yes.
Trish Brown.
I have my hands raised.
All right, if Trish, okay, so it looks like she's.
Oh, the ambassador is raising his hand.
Yeah, he is next. Mayor, you're next, but Trish Brown has her hands raised, unless she's done. Okay, let's hear from the mayor then. Mayor Dale Holness.
Thank you very much. Let me say that I don't totally agree with the assessment that Blacks look for others to solve their problem. To some extent, the Willerlin syndrome has set in, yes.
Hello?
Where if you, I was at the Million Man March and Minister Farrakhan spoke to
it was not on the agenda
white Europeans in America
because we were doing it on the fly.
By the color of their skin,
where do you want to fit it?
By who came first, who came second, and everything categories you can't think of, so that we would not support each other. But I can tell you this, that I have an experience that most of us as Black people look to work together to solve problems. And oftentimes the resources are limited. And let me tell you, my purpose to be elected is to help bring about balance and equity and fairness. In Broward County, we now have an Office of Equity and community investment based on the principle of dismantling racism. And we're doing a tremendous job with that at this point in time. When I got to Broward County, today our
So let me
budget,
text
with a budget
Chubbs
of
and
over $5 billion. Today
then
we're
we're
over
gonna put
$6
it
billion.
in.
Only
All right.
10.25% of our contracts went to small, minority, and women-owned businesses, which is where most of our Black businesses are. Today, 39% is going to that because I made an effort to change the dynamics of that. I'm creating Black millionaires, which will help us economically across the spectrum. I've worked to put in place civil citation where we don't arrest our people and put them in jails. And there's still a lot of work to be done. That's why I'm so grateful that I supported Sheriff Tony, because Sheriff Tony, since he got there 18 months ago, has changed the fifth floor where management is. You heard from Captain Renee Peterson just now. The undersheriff's a Black woman. Every person who wears a gun reports to is a Black man. The person in charge of HR is a Black man. His chief of staff is a Black woman. And I've been fighting for those kind of things for a long time. So, and he's instituted policies now that makes it so that they're watching police officers who are abusing their power so that they don't get to 20-something or 30-something when they kill someone and then we find out, hey, these guys been doing bad stuff all the time. There's systems that's being put in place because he's in office. And that is why it's so important, the work that ADGG does, to empower us to be in a place where our lived experience can guide us towards making decisions and putting policies in place that change the dynamics that exist in this country. And I'll be joining as soon as I get off this call.
Thank you, Mayor Holness. Can you stay on the mic for a second? Captain Peterson wanted you to clarify the question. I think there was a question you were trying to ask her, and she wants you to ask that question openly.
So what I'd probably say is that Captain Peterson can speak more to what I said about what Sheriff Tony is doing. She could amplify what I just said. You know, I got chastised because I endorsed him early. And there's some people who say, well, you know, it was put in by a Republican. Well, I say to them, well, what difference does it make? The job he's doing now is what matters. So it was a very tough, very, very highly contested election. To the extent that even my daughter was on the other side, that I had to say you're wrong. And she's an adult now, so she can, of course, choose her side. But we were able to prevail because we fought hard enough to get to where we were about 2% above the other candidates. Go ahead, if Captain Renee Peterson would want to.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to follow up. It's one thing to look in the window of an organization and say what you think is going on. I'm in the organization. I have lived experiences as a Black female in law enforcement. When I came into the agency, they call Black female as a double negative. Some white men could live with working with a Black male, but if you were a female, you were a double negative. So we had it extra hard. So when Sheriff Tony came into office, one of the things that engaging the community, trying to get the messaging out there, and Mayor Holness was very bold. He is not telling you any lies. There were a lot of opposition against Sheriff Tony. And what was so disappointing, it was people who looked like him, some of us. And when they told me who they were supporting, it wasn't that I didn't like the other candidate. I knew the other candidate. He was our previous sheriff. But when I asked, why do you like him? I'm telling you what this person is doing. And some of the answers that I got from people in our community, which we have to change the mindset, was, oh, you know, he used to give us 7 bicycles at our program. Or, you know, they drop off turkeys. And what I told some of these people, I have twin daughters that are 4 years old. I give my daughters in the morning sometimes 3 M&Ms. If they put on their shoes, get dressed.
America is in crisis,
right?
gasping for air.
At the end of the day, I'm paying
Racism,
such a
police
small
brutality
price
unabated,
for a peace of mind.
COVID-19 is on
And
rampage,
if you are
and
willing to
corruption.
sell your vote for some turkeys and some bicycles and leave a system in place that is so racist, you're selling your soul. You are totally not even coming nowhere near. You are the problem. And I will say I saw that and it was so disappointing. And I took away from that, how can I not look at this person and feel judgmental? what I decided to do is I decided to educate. I decided to talk about them. What's more important, those 7 bicycles, or if your nephew's walking down the street and someone stops him and he's brutalized because the system's in place, but you can't see the forest for the trees because you're worried about the 7 bicycles and the turkeys. So I think education is so important. I can tell you, he came into our agency and he put a lot of people in place, and a lot of people didn't like how he got there. The vehicle that he used to get there was a Republican. And he came in there and he absolutely has done a lot for people who are minorities. So don't get so focused on some of the things. My thing is, what are you doing when you hold this seat? What are you doing for the people that look like you? And if you're just looking for my vote and you get it and you don't do what you're supposed to do, shame on this should come for you and hold you accountable and kick your necks. That is what we have to do. I have learned to be bold and speak freely. I can honestly tell you I didn't speak this way because if I train hard, prove myself, if Oprah walk in a store and she's on television and they won't sell her, I'm done with myself. We need to take up space, let them hear, and what we came for, and not a thing in line what Mayor Holness said. And I'm super energized and happy to be here with you all.
Thank you, Captain Peterson. We have a few more questions to go. So please, again, post all your questions in the chat section so that, and I know we are almost running out of time, but there is a question for, and I'll ask Honorable Lena M. Johnson to take this question, and then Ambassador Battle to follow up. It's a 2-part question. How does the, sorry, this question came from Lady T. Thompson. And the question is, how does the funding and the debt that is owed to the United Nations by the United States impact its policy for the African diaspora? Honorable Lena M. Johnson, please. Is she still with us? *6 to unmute. All right. If she's not, we'll have. I think she's still there. I think she's muted. Technical team, can you unmute Ms. Johnson, please? Lorna M. Johnson.
She can unmute herself.
Okay, yeah, she's probably on another call. So I'll ask Ambassador Battle to tackle that question for us. And the question is, how does the funding or the debt owed to the United Nations by the United States impact its policies for the African diaspora?
Well, let me speak about what I'm hoping is going to happen when President Biden is elected as president. And when we are able to restore our commitment to the United Nations in full force. For a long period of time, particularly under the Obama administration, also under Bush, also under Clinton, we kept active with our commitment to the United Nations. And we will continue to do so under a Biden administration. But the debt that the U.S. owes has, interestingly enough, never affected our ability to have some degree of influence in United Nations activity and actions. What I'm looking forward to is us being able to renew our partnership with the African continent on 2 tracks. One, to restore relationships that President Trump has destroyed. For example, we had a long track record of multiple years working collaboratively with the African Union and with the regional economic communities on the African continent. Trump has backslidden. He's moved away from that. He's removed the U.S. voice in multilateral activity. We also will bilaterally. that is having a strong partnership with each country on the African continent. You know, interestingly enough, American relationship with countries like Zimbabwe and other nations, even when there are nations on the continent that we have had some disagreements with for a number of reasons, we never stopped working with those governments and with those people, rather, in those countries in an effort to help restore a sense of balance and a sense of democracy and a sense of fair play. So and I'm going to be very partisan here, what you will see in a Biden-Harris administration is an on-purpose, intentional effort to work closely with the African continent to help build African wealth on the African continent and to help build African wealth where Africa's trade balance with the rest of the world would be such that Africa will create its own middle class of people who will have an opportunity to govern itself. So the debt we owe to China, debt we owe to many other nations, we still are the world's largest economy. And we still will be in a position after the Trump administration with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to restore our economy the same way President Obama and Vice President Biden did in 2009, to rebuild an economy where we will again be the strongest economy on the face of the earth and thus the strongest partner with Africa on the face of the earth. You will never find a better partner than the United States when the United States is governed well. But when the United States is not governed well, no one can guarantee what kind of partnership we will have.
Thank you, Ambassador Battle. We'll go to the next question. So we'll take a few more questions and we'll begin to wrap up. The next questions here is regarding what specific policies does the Biden-Harris campaign have that is in favor of Africa? And I'll say any of you can take that question. Ambassador Battle, I'll begin with you since you were the last speaker.
Yeah. One of the very first things we want to see done in a Biden-Harris administration is a review and renewal of U.S. relationship with the African continent, again, multilaterally and bilaterally, and a restoration of what was started under President Obama. And interestingly enough, what President Obama did was he built on something that Clinton had done. Clinton was the first president of the United States to bring together all of the foreign ministers from the African continent. President Obama was the first U.S. president to bring together all of the heads of state, presidents, and prime ministers from the African continent, except three who were not able to come. Well, four, because the president of Liberia could not come because of Ebola. But we understood that. But he was the first to bring together all of the heads of state. So we have been saying that one of the things that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will do is to restore the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit. Now, notice that it was not only a meeting between American government and political leaders and African political leaders, it was also a bringing together of the wealthiest American corporations and the wealthiest people from the African continent. In fact, my office, the office I was called back to Washington, D.C. to head as during the diplomatic relationship with the conference, my job as senior advisor to the African Bureau of the State Department was to lead the diplomatic work for the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit. We said to some of our largest corporations, if the president of your corporation does not show up, we will not accept anybody from your company to show up. We're talking about the biggest multi-billion-dollar corporations in America. And they asked, well, why is that the case? And my response was, if we bring an African president and an African prime minister and an African wealthy person to the table, and you can't bring your president to the table, then we don't want him to show up, because we think that African heads of state and African wealth is worthy of the president of your corporation. This is the kind of approach that a Biden-Harris campaign will have.
And if I may add to that, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties, with my phone here. So sorry about that. But Dr. Battle, Ambassador Battle has said it quite well. One thing you must understand that the world is basically experiencing the same thing at the same time. And us being the superpower that we always we still have a lot of control as to what we're able to do and not do. And even though the current government, what we have to do is make sure that we get out and vote, everybody vote, and that will change in government. Once again, everything go back to where it was and better. And I think we all understand where Africa is and who Africa really truly is right now. I think the world is aware of that. So everybody that I've spoken to or I've been around, we know the importance of Africa and how it has been neglected over the years, but we also know the value of Africa. Everyone knows the value of Africa. And for that partnership to be realized, it could be a fortune for everybody. So I believe that the Biden-Harris team will focus very strongly in Africa. I know for myself that I've been working in Africa for a while. We know the value of Africa, and the people like myself and the people that I've been around in administration or legislation are pretty much on the same page. So it doesn't matter how much money, like Ambassador Battle said, it doesn't matter how much money you think the America owes this, owes that. We still have enough. Fortunately, we can print as much as we want. So it's not an issue. It's more a matter of relationships, will, and negotiations. So I think Africa will be right up front in all of these negotiations, and I will be one that will pushing a lot for Africa, so you can count on me for that. And hopefully the most important thing right now, as Dr. Kana stated, you need to get as one Africa. It's all about unite, pool your resources together. That's pool your resources to come to one. You go just have a little thought there and it not come together, it's just gonna blow away things. So get together, work as a team, show your strength so that not be some recommendation.
May I also order tickets from particularly when it comes to the area. A lot of American business don't quite understand the enormity of this to have. We need to be available and be advised and get winning ground. So as the full understanding, appreciation, in collaboration with Diaspora, who actually Americans to have a safe landing as they respond. Let me underscore and emphasize once again, the United States remains the preferred trading partner. However, current trend is not changed. The U.S. stands to slide from the number one state to allow that to happen. Together, continental Africans, we put it in a better position to continue to maintain. So yes, to work with the Biden to make sure that understanding of what's going on the continent is ending up with the right people in office is this first step in right. Thank you.
Let me
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, Otto.
And I agree with my colleague just said, and also what my colleague Johnson as well. What the administration has done, and I know you are a partisan and you remain partisan. What the administration has done is he has intentionally tried to reach economic communities' ability to do collaborative work. And he's tried to enter bilateral exclusive relationships with individual African countries. Now, there is merit in able to do that, but in being able to do that must never be put ahead of helping African nations work collaboratively with the region economic activities and with the continent. I remember a few years ago, African talking, and he said, quite clearly. We agree with that. Us. So if China feeds us or whoever else feeds us, it's okay. Washington, after that meeting, Assistant Secretary of State Johnny Carson brought back to Washington after that meeting was, we need to step up. Africans should let them know how much we want to be their unfriendly. Hillary Clinton did all the effort of the content. We will get how many millionaires, black millionaires he's making in which is what happened here in Atlanta, Georgia, when there was this effort to help that require companies and organizations to do work directly with small owned businesses in America. We will do it again on a global scale. Be partner helps people in areas in you can get you the evidence.
Thank you. The battle. This question, the question to the second bit will go to Lena M. Johnson. The question is a clarification. How do you motivate African diaspora at the local level, Florida, and nationally, to be active? So, Ms. first, and then Ms.
Thank you very much to hear my thoughts. So, my thinking has foundational influence when it comes to African city as everyone to do the issues that impact most. And in Tallahassee, we are seeing some serious issues, particularly when it comes to the ground issues like COVID-19. 32304 has the highest poverty area designated by the state of Florida. Impact for reading for children at the third level has the highest incidence of poverty in the state of Florida. And that's the COVID cases in this country. This is a whole country. We need to take this most because monies and coming community typically getting they need to be. So we have to call for equity to make sure that funding allocated to how people can make sure that they're getting what's valued to them. They'll voice their opinion. They'll come out. They'll tell their stories. But we have something back the most, and yet to tell those stories more effectively than we can. So I'd like to talk about how we might look at the foundation impacts getting into our community. There's people who are suffering more than now COVID. So paying those things, getting people things that they need, advocating that the money should flow, radio and make sure that we all understand our voice. Your voice is who you are, as life you're in. Clearly, it's not allowed to make this happen. You won't have to the legacy that they would fundamentals always.
Leonard Johnson in the political process.
I was talking with someone today, and we were in organization to maybe in your organization is come up with a plan to make sure certain number of people are registered with Diaspora to vote, designated, and we'll to get registered to vote. So that way of then also in raising money, we are not doing anymore. So one thing is in phone numbers from your organization within the DNC for young people, ones that are more reach out to. So have the young people reach out to young people and making sure that you have a and it's called One Name Under God in and activities are before plan women life to young girls. And how people. I was doing my interviews with people. I wanted to distribute the letters that I heard. One of them was she's had a birthday. It's gonna be. So what I made, she said register. She don't. So I said okay. I want you to go with the tonight. Let me know in order to register to vote. Because I heard to one thing or step fine check.
When it comes to like on local level, things have to be addressed. Using politics, history, politics on the local level, and with our children, political process into our school systems about how to vote. It is to explain bills, how to process this. The other thing is that comes into the put in poverty impacted people to the forefront. Because 65% of even in my community are poverty impacted. What a lot of people in our community are having a struggle with is wondering why there is no investment in people. Investing in investment, it's all countries have made mistakes in that we have to start from the bottom up. Educate people results. The people run. A lot of people it comes down to choosing official legislators with the we need to design officials on them, not to say they have to when it comes to reaching out to people on the ground.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. President Short, we have a fixed left of question.
How the candidate Mebraka now was successful. What did was a campaign and have Africans go to Africans to talk to them. So African church gathering and all that, see they can eat African look at them. And then he appeared Africa myself, female, Africa, I'd like to see kind of long. This 50 years that they were asking me, is the main election to put in? I was made them have a sense of sort of balance. So they're asking me when is stuff like zero inflation or stuff. So anyway.
What do you mean?
Salad, but you don't like I was making sea salad. You know, like cream.
We're having technical issues.
Put whatever you want on it. I'm making me a season.
Yeah.
Keep correct my engaging. Next, how we it's a question for regarding how AG helps the organization. What I'll do is set that question aside. I know when later we can take that question on with the person. If you haven't visited, I will see how we do other songs. I will and talk with asking you what you're doing to do that. This other question has to do with something. How are they going to react to the village innovation? It is how we ensure that we're will engage in a similar battle.
Military options. What happened? Say it will tell what happened in, but I'll be brief. The general Gaddafi was put in a mechanism, but and the years during the United Nations and Libya peaceful to have been troubled. Again, this is under the to have community who felt that it tone to that bend. And so it's difficult that was the things that was in process. Libya was to a potential flaw. U.S. engaged in the African continent with nations effort partners effort now African military protect the African restore so African war but military non-being very long in the and said to me in a conversation that one of the reasons that the African Union now in traditional government because of the massive slaughter of African workers. And I was able to communicate directly with Susan Rice, who at that time was back to the United States and Secretary. 24-hour period, we were able to really engage with and we have had before the transitional government. We engaged with the Union and we come back as with transitional government, sat down and met with the African Union. We were and paved a path forward.